TGIF, the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show, is back here on Friday, January 16th, 2026. I'm your host, Chris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. With me, as always, running on fumes, I think is probably the best way to put it. That is your Sabres beat writer for The Athletic. His name is Matthew Fairburn. You can find everything that Matthew's been doing, but it's a lot over at theathletic.com/Sabres, where Matthew has been working feverishly covering this team in the busy week that we will recap here on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. If you're watching this on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode is ready to go. And you can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can please leave a 5-star review. Crap all over me in the comments. All right, Matthew Fairburn, 3-game week thus far, and they're not done yet. Sabres rebounded from their home ice loss to the Florida Panthers on Monday, picking up a pair of regulation victories on back-to-back nights. 5-2 over Philly. And then on reunion night of that 05-06 team, a 5-3 victory over Montreal. So 2 different routes for this team to get victories, but victories nonetheless. And the Sabres improved themselves in the standings. We'll get to that. But I think regardless of the standings, Matthew, the guys are having fun out there, it seems. And there's some pretty good vibes around the team. I mean, when that 10-game losing streak was halted, we asked how they'd respond. They suffered another loss on Monday, and they responded well. And I think it's a lot of it has to be due to the good energy and the belief that this group has in themselves.
No doubt. I mean, a togetherness as well as a group that is the best I've seen it since I've been on the beat. It's funny, preparing for 05-06 reunion night, I was not around Buffalo when that team was going on that run. Obviously was watching the league and knew them from afar, but preparing for this night, calling some of those players, obviously talking to Tim Graham, who covered that team. The more those guys were talking, it was like, I don't know if it's the writer in me, but it's sounding like they're describing this group a little bit, right? Like they came into the season, pretty low expectations. The arena wasn't really full. They were kind of coming out of a dark time in franchise history with the bankruptcy. And, so as a writer, you're kind of like, oh, like I'm seeing some parallels, but I was like, you can't really go there with, one of the greatest teams in franchise history. But then some of those guys were saying it, like JP Dumont, we were talking earlier this week, and he watches quite a bit of Sabres games, and he's like, it's starting to remind me of 05-06. And, a few other guys started saying it. And even JP Dumont was like, I'm sure you don't want to go there, but like Lindy's probably, he's like, Lindy probably doesn't really want to like think that, but I wonder if it's creeped into his head. And then after the game, Lindy was like, our game tonight kind of reminded me of one of those 05 games. And so it's like, they were really kind of leaning, they weren't shying away from that sort of parallel. And like I said, it's not like, oh, good team, draw the line. There's just those little things. A young team. There was a lot of young guys on that 05-06 team. But that quality of how tight those guys were is something that we'll see if this Sabres team can replicate, but it feels like there's something brewing in that regard. You had 18 guys show up for that reunion last night. A few guys were last minute dropouts for stuff that popped up. And then you have 3 guys that are general managers in the league that couldn't come. Nathan Page is coaching in Rochester last night, so he couldn't come. But that's a pretty good showing for something like that. In fact, I think it might have been better than the showing the Hurricanes got for the reunion of the team that actually won it that year. So you'd have to double check my math on that. They got a decent group, but this group was excited to get together. Some of them hadn't seen each other in a while. And you wonder, all right, can this team do something worthy of this moment, for the fans and for this team? And they did last night. That was a heck of a game. And not just good for them to get a win, but the way they played. I mean, I see why Lindy said what he said, because it was one of those exciting back and forth games. That 05-06 team was living on comebacks and was never done in a game. And the Sabres had to come back twice last night, fell down 1-0 and then 3-2 and managed to do it. Tage Thompson was, one of the most encouraging things about this recent run of big games is that Tage Thompson seems to be showing up in a lot of these big moments, and the games are going to get bigger from here on out. So you're going to need those big game players, and it feels like Tage Thompson's becoming one of those guys. 5 points, 3 goals, 2 primary assists. It was a crazy night. It's been a wild week over at the arena.
Yeah, you're looking tired, so I'm glad that you rolled out of bed and made it into this virtual recording studio here. Wasn't sure if I was going to get you this morning because you have been kind of grinding away, but I guess a couple thoughts. Comparing this group, it is premature in terms of maybe where
Totally,
this team
yeah.
could go in the playoffs, but excuse me, I think it's worth doing that if it inspires this current group to have that togetherness, to develop that glue that keeps them together. As long as it doesn't set the expectations that, I mean, look, you want to set expectations. Obviously, the goal is to win the Stanley Cup, but I mean, they got a lot of work to do to become a team that is a serious contender. But I think it's okay to point out what that team did to the city and got the fans back. And the timing of the reunion couldn't have been any better because the team, their recent play in the past month plus has already inspired the fans to come back. They started to see it on their own before getting that group back together in that circle at center ice before the game last night. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to start talking about that team for the team building sense. I'm not articulating the thought the right way, but I think you know where I'm going.
Well,
Um,
the reason I think it's okay, and I was writing about this last night for the story that went up this morning. It's like it's easy to think about that team for what they became, right? That run to the Eastern Conference Finals that probably should have ended in a Stanley Cup if they didn't get a crazy rash of injuries.
yeah.
It's it's easy to forget where they came from, right? Like they were not supposed to be good. No, at least nobody was expecting them to be good. And certainly they had some good timing with some of the rule changes, the style of team that they built. They were ready for that style of hockey. A lot of those guys had grown together in Rochester and got a real unique year in the AHL where nobody was getting called up. They were all just there playing together. But they weren't supposed to be good and they weren't getting full buildings at the beginning of that season. Like it wasn't a good time in
Mm-hmm.
Sabres history with, the lockout, bankruptcy, all those things. I feel like that piece of it is is pretty important for this current group to remember. And I think I touched on it the other day that Paul Maurice mentioned earlier in the week about the Eastern Conference and said something that's been on my mind about once these playoffs start, like in the Eastern Conference, it really feels like it's game on and it could be anybody's game. And it hasn't felt that way. And that's another piece of this that I think about because I think in the modern NHL, we're trained to say, oh, this team's never made the playoffs. They're not going to go on a run. They're just going to get in and get some experience, and the teams that are supposed to win will beat them. There's not as many of those teams anymore. This year
Yeah.
in particular, I mean, there were last year, and so Ottawa snuck in and Montreal snuck in, and you're like, yeah, this is going to fizzle out quickly. And not saying that same thing won't happen, but when you look at there could be quite a few new teams, and Florida's banged up, and how healthy can they get for the start of the playoffs? So you almost think, yeah, I mean, imagine if they could not just sneak in, but win around. I mean, what that would do. And something Tage Thompson mentioned last night that I think came up in almost every conversation we had with some of these alumni is he was struck by how much these guys loved playing in Buffalo.
That's
And,
what I mean. That's like
you
pointing
know,
that out. Yeah.
you know, a lot of these guys talking about how they stuck around after they were done playing. Maybe some of them ended up leaving 5 or 10 years later or something, but raised kids here. And, Jay McKee is still local.
Hmm.
He's actually in Wilson commuting to his job over the border, coaching in Brampton. And, it was cool because Jochen Hecht is like saying how last night it was snowing and it was like a messy commute in, but he's like, this is how I remember Buffalo. But earlier in the week, JP Dumont was saying, just make the playoffs. He's like, all this talk about nobody wants to come to Buffalo and, it's not a desirable place. Nobody's going to want to stay. He's like, make the playoffs. Everybody's going to want to stay. Like once they see what this place is like when they make the playoffs. And I mean, even Tage Thompson said this is the most fun he's had as a Sabre. These last few weeks, getting on this winning run. And yeah, I think it's good timing to lean into that group and remember, like, look, on the outside of Buffalo, people might look at that team and wonder, like, hey, why are they doing this reunion night for 05, 06? Like, they didn't win the cup. They didn't, but that,
They do it on a night when you're playing a team that's won
right,
24
exactly. And they
championships. You
have,
know.
my colleague Arpin was in town, covers the Canadians, and they were like, "Oh, geez, a pregame ceremony," and he's like, "Yeah, I guess." He's like, "We can't really be the ones complaining about that since there seems to be one of these every night in Montreal." But
Yeah.
it's a good, yeah. It's just I think realizing on a granular level what made that team special for guys that weren't there, like Tuck remembers, but most of these other guys, it's new to them, and realizing that some of the random guys on that team weren't so random to the fan base, right? Like, it was you ask somebody who their favorite member of that 05, 06 team is, you're gonna get a lot of Ryan Miller and Danny Briere, but you're gonna get some off the wall
Mhm.
answers as well, and I think people were excited to see those guys, and it's something a lot of the players have mentioned as I've talked to them about the crowd the last few weeks and what they've observed about it kinda coming to life. Like, Josh Norris was saying he was, talking to his family about all the little things that the crowd picks up on,
Mhm.
and Benson was saying something similar. They really notice small things and appreciate the Malensteins of the world. Like, you're kinda doing that exercise in your head watching because Tage said it, like, hopefully this could be them someday, right? Like, someday people are remembering this group, and you're doing the exercise in your head, like, who are those guys on this team, the random guys that people will wanna remember, and, um, they have a long way to go to get there, but to your point, channeling that energy a little bit, um, you have to do it, and look, second half of a back-to-back, to have that as the wind in your sails, I think was a benefit to the Sabres. It has been a long week of hockey for them, and a long week of hockey for the fans, right? They have the playoff football game on Sunday, Stanley Cup champs on Monday, back to back, 2 huge games in the conference. So, obviously the fan base hasn't, um, it's almost all the way back, but it's not all the way back. So, like, trying to fill the arena 3 times in one night, a 4th time on Saturday, like, is not a small task. And there was a ton of juice in the building last night, so it was a good atmosphere.
Yeah, just to kind of put a bow, I think, on the reunion part of it, I saw Vanek and I was like, "Oh man, you know, the Sabres better get off to a hot start or Lindy's gonna bench Vanek," was one thought. Jay McKee, always good seeing Jay McKee. He was one of those players that I really appreciated watching that team every game 20 years ago. I can't believe it's been 20 years. And oh, by the way, not you said Brampton. You want to piss someone off in Brantford?
Oh,
Call them
Brantford.
Brampton. Yeah, no, I do that all the time. So I want to catch it before the commenters do. Okay. Brantford Bulldogs. Yeah, you want to piss someone off there. Yeah, call him Brampton. Um, but good seeing him. And during the second period, he was on the broadcast and there was dialogue, kind of talking over the play between Rob Ray and Jay McKean. It almost sounded like a job interview in a way, talking about how you coach certain players, strengths, how you build your systems, how do you adjust to the talent that you have. It was very interesting. And if you want to get some insight into a young coach and kind of what he's going through, working his way up the ranks to maybe one day becoming an NHL player, go back and listen to the second period broadcast at the beginning. I would not be surprised at all if Jay McKee ends up in Buffalo one day as the head coach of the Buffalo Sabres. So just wanted to kind of point that out. But I guess let's get to the game stuff and just kind of talk about this team now, because winning back-to-back games in conference really, really, again, couldn't see it coming. We talked about this team. Can they win 2 or 3 games in a row? We're beyond that now. And to, again, respond that the way that they did with each passing test that they pass, you're starting to say, okay, this team has what it takes. They're for real. The Eastern Conference is tough. They got to keep it going. Can they? There's still questions. But, what we saw this week, some new line configurations are kind of forced into that. Let's get to that. But the Philly win, let's just start there. Wednesday night, 14 shots on goal. Dahlin gets his 5th career multi-goal game, and they get UPL in net. UPL looked pretty solid, I would say, stopping 20 of 22. Matthias Samuelsson gets another goal. Jack Quinn, Ryan McLeod gets an empty netter. Okay, so nice win. Despite having 14 shots on goal, very efficient win for the Sabres. The standout for me was that the PP went 2 for 6 in that game. Then the reunion night comes in the next night. Good energy just around that whole block down there. The shot volume nearly doubles. So the Sabres go from 14 shots on goal. They get 27 in the victory over Montreal. Tage Thompson's 9th career hat trick. 5-point night for Tage. And then you get also goals from Doan, Tuck. Big game, big stage. The right players lead the way. Colton Ellis. Colton Ellis, always an adventure with Colton Ellis, stopping 20 of 23. Again, the power play shows up, goes 2 for 4. So now you have a power play that went 1 for 21. Now they're 4 for their last 10. And the power play, I think, just kind of recapping those 2 games. Again, different routes to victories, but the power play getting back super important. Your guys that need to show up, whether it was Dahlin scoring twice in the Philly game, Tage having a 5-point night in the win over the Habs, you're starting to get that. Got to keep it going. But the only other thing I wanted to point out from the Montreal game was Metza 738, Bryson 602. So what were your takeaways? For me, it was the power play, but I just kind of threw a lot at you there, kind of recapping, but also sprinkling in some observations and whatever. What's your takeaway there from those 2
Well, the
2
power
wins?
play, you got the power play, you got Dahlin and Thompson, and when I look at that, I think that is what you're gonna need. You're not gonna get it every night. The power play is not gonna, I mean, certainly not this power play. We've seen the cold stretches they can go through, and it's not realistic for almost any player in the league not named McKinnon or McDavid to think that every night you're gonna get multi-point efforts from Thompson and Dahlin. But really notable that it came in this, you know, crazy week that they have on the schedule with 2 big games squeezed into a back-to-back with an emotional reunion and all these things. And you're gonna need, you know, big players to show up to get you through imperfect games. And it's encouraging that they're getting that, that Darlene had the night that he did on Wednesday, which I think he needed. He's still trying to find himself, and he mentioned on Wednesday that he was in a good place mentally coming into the game. Some I don't know if he'd gotten good news or if it was just a good day off the ice. I'm sure there's good days and bad days with everything he's going through. But then he gets a couple of goals and he's still talking like there's more. There's more. And Tage Thompson, look, I know he's not perfect, right? We've talked about, some of the games where he hasn't kind of met the standard that he has set. But I'm struck by this game, New Year's Eve against the Dallas Stars. Like, the guy just takes over.
Mhm.
And that is encouraging because games are going to get bigger and bigger. And this guy is going to get a taste of the biggest games he's ever played in his life in about a month. He did score that gold medal winning goal. You're starting to just see this guy as a big game player.
Mhm.
And you're seeing how he can take over games and change games, and that's a big development. It's one of those things that is the unknown about this team. It's like, who are your big game players? You haven't really played in big games, so
Yeah.
how the hell would you know? Most of these guys haven't played in big games. Like Bo Byram had a great run with Colorado when they won the cup. Like he had some massive games. So
Mhm.
you're like, okay, this guy in big games is gonna show up for you. Um, Owen Power was good last night.
Mhm.
Like
Especially late.
right, like there, we talk about the lack of maybe assertiveness or aggression from him, but there
Mhm.
is something to the calmness in that big moment with that crowd. I mean, that third period, the building was really, really buzzing. And not just like it was so loud, but it was just a constant buzz because there was the uncertainty. There was the back and forth nature of the game. And, Power was steady throughout that, which is uh, a nice sign. So yeah, it's like let's figure out who are the big game players on this team. And obviously Thompson is one. Like, wow, that was a crazy performance from him and just an impressive. I mean, you're seeing the support players too. Like this team is built to play the grueling hockey that the schedule is going to demand of them because of players like Josh Doan. I mean, even Peyton Krebs made a pretty big play to set up or help get the play started for one of Thompson's goals late.
Yeah.
They can play they can get contributions from all over. And but yeah, last night it was their star that they were leaning on.
Tage, when he can take over, use his physical gifts, he's holding on to pucks a little longer, using his feet, incredible mobility for a man that size. But yeah, he's got the eye of the tiger since that Olympic news came. And it's a good, look, he still had some Tommy Dangles
Oh
moments
yeah, he
last
always
night.
does.
You know what I
He's
mean? And when
the
we say Tommy Dangles moments, we're saying, maybe trying to do a little too much with his hands and trying to, go through a couple guys. But that's also talking that's also an indication of the confidence level that he's playing with right now. Um, I think with this team, look, the big game players, you're going to find out more. It's going to be more revealing. They don't need to manufacture big games. Now, it's not like, like maybe in the past they had to like create what a big game was to see what they were made of. Every game is a playoff game now and they're playing like it. So, no, that is encouraging. Thompson on a 6-game point streak right now. Obviously buoyed by the 5-point effort last night, but he has 5 goals and 7 assists over his last 6. But it's not just him. Tuck's on a 6-game point streak. Josh Doan has 5 goals and 5 assists in his last, 8 games. Zach Benson moved up to the top line recently. He's on a 4-game streak. Back to the power play. There's a player that has 3 assists in his last 2 games that was moved up on PP1, and that's Noah Ostlund. And I like him there. I know you like him there. You texted me last night. We were talking about it. That Doan goal, the first goal that the Sabres scored in the Montreal game last night. I don't think Doan can take that step to the net and go for the short side snipe unless Ostlund has the wherewithal, the hockey sense to go to that back post and draw a little bit of attention. You see the defenseman kind of go lean towards that side where Ostlund was going. Little things like that, little details, little movement. Um, but I guess it's a segue into just, talking a little more about the power play because it's simple plays that have actually gotten the power play going
No,
here
they're
in
just
these last
shooting.
couple of games.
Like,
Yeah.
Dahlin just shooting, Thompson just shooting, Doan just shoot like, just nothing crazy about it. Like, just get the puck on net, find the open net, right? Not, like, just mindlessly throwing it, but look, find a spot, pick your spot, and that's what they need more of in general. Like, there was a 2-on-1 last night with Dahlin and I think Benson,
Yeah.
where he tossed it over, the puck hopped over Benson's stick, it hit some weird ice, but it's like, Dahlin should probably just shoot that the way that he has been on the power play, because on the power play, it's working pretty good for him. He's got a good shot. I don't know if will happen with the power play, like whether they'll keep it up or I've sort of given up on trying to figure out what the hell is going on with that unit and when they'll catch fire and when they won't. But when it's working, I think it's a pretty simple formula. It's finding open shooting lanes, getting the puck on net, and getting bodies to the net. You know, when they were on that slump, the only goal they had was one that bounced off Jason Zucker's back. Like
Yeah.
he gets a lot of the goals on the power play because he's right in front of the net. And it's showing that the most important players on that unit sometimes are the guys that can make plays down low and in space. And you mentioned about Tage Thompson. When he's going, he's protecting pucks. He's hanging on to, like, that's how I know Tage Thompson is feeling it in a given night is he's grinding down low and making extending plays. That's when
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, he's in a groove tonight." And that's, I think, a more dangerous skill for him on the power play than his shot. Like, the one-timer worked for a while when people didn't quite know who he was or still weren't sure if he was that high level goal scorer. It hasn't worked all that well for the last, what, year and a half, 2 years almost? Yeah, because 'cause we're
I mean,
coming up
look at
on the
his goal
2-year
spread
point.
last year. I mean, look at his goal spread last year. It was like even strength. It was like all even strength.
He's
He
a
only had a few
monster at
power
even
play
strength.
goals.
He's
Yeah,
got
yeah,
18 even strength goals this year,
yeah,
second most in the NHL.
yeah.
It's a credit to him that the power play production dried up, and he's still been a productive goal scorer over the last few years, but the one-timer, whether it's easy to read or what, too predictable, it's dried up for him a bit, but when he can hang on to the puck and extend plays down low and then use his wrist shot and his quick release, that's a that's more dangerous than the one-timer. It's like, throw the one-timer out almost at this point, and Ostlund on PP1, I think is definitely, a good look for them. I mean, you mentioned the hockey IQ to get to that space, but his hockey IQ and his playmaking are are really good traits for that unit. Like, they don't without him, I guess Doan is a playmaker, but in a different way, right? He's retrieving
It's just
pucks.
Dolan's just a hockey player.
He is
He
just
can just do. He's good at everything.
he's fantastic player. I mean, he has been these last few games showed up big time in these games, and um, when all these games are blurring together, but he got in a fight. When was that? That wasn't last night. That wasn't Wednesday. Was that over the weekend maybe? I mean, he's just kind of doing a little bit of everything for this team.
He
He's a
fought
heart and soul guy.
Sabrango, right? No, no. Did he fight Sabrango? Shit, now I can't remember who he
No, he
fought.
fought Strome, so it was
He
Saturday
fought
against the
Strome. That's right.
Ducks.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep, I
yeah,
remember that
yeah.
now.
Who the hell fought
Um,
Sabrango?
some
Dunn.
Josh
That
Dunn,
was Dunn.
yeah,
Yeah.
who's now hurt, but
Yep. Yep.
um,
We'll get to that.
it's yeah, it seems like I don't know if they'll want to keep Ostlund up there, but I would consider it. I mean,
Mhm.
I think he's a boost to this lineup. They're a better team when he's in the top 9, and I get that he can make it work on line 4, and I don't begrudge Lindy Ruff for doing it to try to fit everything in and make it work, and Krebs was going, like, I understood some of the logic, but I don't think they should go back to that anytime soon because I just think it's a little bit of a not a total waste of Noah Osland, but it's seeing what he does for the top 9 for, those lines up there and what he can do on that power play unit. It's like, man, this lean into that because this kid is starting to look like a pretty special player.
He's been a boost. I mean, he's been an underrated factor into this surge that happened in early December. He was put out of the lineup for a little bit right before Kevin was let go by the Sabres. And then Kevin is let go on the 15th. Osland came back and played that game in Seattle. That was his first game back after being down a little bit. That was December 14th. And he's been pretty steady. Like, I don't think there's any coincidence they started ripping off runs with him, but it was also Josh Norris. And I think it's pretty incredible that we're over 31 minutes in and we're talking about, a lot of good things happening, other, guys contributing, the right guys contributing, but it's not just the top guys. Fourth line, by the way, had another good game last night. We're doing all this talk about the team and we haven't even mentioned Josh Norris not being available last night. Norris to me has been like the single biggest factor before Thompson got it going after the Olympics, like that late December stretch when they were really getting it going. It was Norris. And then takes a cross check in the second period of the game against Philly. So didn't play last night, but those are two key guys, Osland and Norris. And now maybe that presents an opportunity, with Norris being out for a couple games, maybe, right? He's only missed one so far. What is he, day to day?
They said day to day. It's
like that presents an opportunity for Norris, or I'm sorry, for Osland, basically.
for sure,
Yeah.
especially with the power play minutes and getting a time on on one of those top 3 lines. Norris got cross checked in the ribs after the Sabres' 4th goal on Wednesday night against the Flyers.
Mhm.
I wonder about this, what it all earlier in the year. You remember if when he got hurt, Lindy Ruff at one point said it's not the same injury, but it's sort of related. And last year was the oblique.
Yep.
The only
Happened right
thing,
in late in his tenure with Ottawa before the deal.
yes,
Right. Yeah.
and got worse. And when I when I think about what's related to an oblique, one of the only things I can think of is the ribs, right? So
Mhm.
did he have something early in the year? This is just trying to connect dots, but I think the fact that it's day to day is encouraging. How legitimate that day to day is. Sometimes that can stretch into a week, but you can get a pretty gnarly, fracture to the ribs. There's degrees to what you can get there, and regardless, it probably won't be something that's super fun to play with whenever he does come back. But I think it's probably a sigh of relief that he's day to day, and it's not something that immediately, Josh Dunn's out for 4 to 6 weeks with the mid body injury that he's dealing with. So we'll see how quickly they get Norris back, but there is a bit more confidence in how they can withstand it because of how Oslin's playing. That wasn't an option early in the season. That whether maybe it was, maybe he was ready and they should have gone that route, but it just wasn't something that was really on the table for them right away when Norris got hurt. And now he's playing like he could center a line for a bit if you need him. He can fill in on the power play. We've talked a lot about him on this show. I mean, he is becoming one of their, 6 5 best forwards. Like he's a player.
Yeah. So with this revolving door right now with Dunn going on IR, Norris not available for the game last night against Montreal, kind of caused some revisions from Lindy Ruff. So it's Benson, Thompson, Tuck, Zucker, McLeod, Quinn. Oslin was with Krebs and Doan. Just want to make sure I have that right because it looks really funny, and then Greenway, Kozak came back in the lineup and back Malenstein. So yeah, I guess we'll see. And along the way, also the Sabres recalled for the first time in his NHL career. His first NHL recall, Consta Helenius, came up from Rochester. Kind of curious are they going to try to, do a revolving door there on that fourth line? I think it's nice because he can play center. Nice to have another guy that can play center by causing Helenius up. But I think he's probably up right now in a break glass in case of emergency mode right now. See how long Norris is out. Sabres aren't
Greenway
practicing, right?
Sabres are off today. Greenway was out on Wednesday, so Kozak went back in on Wednesday as sort of the load management deal for Greenway. So I wondered if they would throw Helenius in last night. And actually I didn't. Usually you're like, oh man, they're gonna throw, a kid in this moment. I don't know about that, but as I thought about it, I was like, man, this kid would probably love it. Like he would probably handle it. I mean, he's got that kind of swagger about him where
Yeah.
the pressure and stuff like that seems to bring something out in him. But yeah, they kept him out. And so, but when you saw Zucker last night get banged up on that, what Lindy Ruff said, maybe not quite an accidental collision with Arbor Xhekaj. And
that shot block.
And then he comes back. I was shocked he came back. Like
Yeah.
I was fearing like all sorts of different things. Like it was the left leg and it got tangled up weird. And you're like, oh geez, is that going to be a knee? But he comes back in the game and blocks that shot. And it was like, holy smokes, dude. Like that guy's going to be sore today. He's already been playing through some stuff and missed a bunch of time with injuries this year. But that was one of the things Lindy Ruff pointed to when he was saying, that this team is coming together like that 05-06 team. He pointed to that shot block and said,
Yeah. Selling out for each other.
That's just like these guys are all about each other. And Zucker's a big part of that, in the room and on the ice. So, but when I saw that, I thought maybe Helenius does get a game. You can put him on the wing. And if you're losing Zucker, you want a skill guy. And it's interesting that Helenius got the call over Roseanne. You're watching more of the farm team than I am, but I think it is a different set of eyes now in the chair, right? Making these decisions. And maybe Jarmo Kekalainen's seeing a little something in Helenius. Maybe it's just a reward for a good season. They knew whoever it was that was coming up wasn't going to play, but either way, it's definitely one of those eyebrow-raising moments when a player like that gets called up, an exciting player, and I think a lot of the fans are probably wondering if he might sneak into a game.
Yeah, it's possible. I think a lot of it, even though you have Oslin here and he has positional versatility, I think that positional versatility with Helenius was also at a minimum, a contributing factor, but likely a much larger factor with Norris being a guy that kind of drops out. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's ready. I think Helenius is ready to at least get the call and practice with the big club and be around the team. And we talk about it a lot. You don't always just call a guy up and throw him right in. You call a guy up, get him around, and if you need him, you put him in, you ease him in, set the expectations properly with the player. I really like the season that Helenius has had. I mean, he's up to 30 points right now down on the farm. Good shooting percentage. I was looking at his numbers in terms of his all situations. So Helenius this year has been on the ice for 51 goals for and only 32 against. Now, the power play numbers, it's boosted by power play. I mean, 24. He's been on the ice for 24 power play goals. Even strength, though, is 24, 24. So it's exactly 50% the share of goals that he's been out there. So it's pretty even. 19 goals for, 5-on-5, 20 goals against. But he's just taken control of his game in Rochester this year. And you mentioned it. He is a gamer. He's got a little bit of edge to him. He's a guy that would just kind of go in there, almost like Benson, bowl in a china shop in a way, unfazed, just go out, play his game, piss some guys off. Benson was pissing guys off last night. It was great.
And
Um,
Wednesday and
you see a
Monday.
lot of that, and every game pretty much. Yeah, you just smiling at guys. So I think I think the compete. So let's go back and talk about what Yarmo was talking about in terms of talent, right? Character, compete level. He sees a lot of that from Hellenius. He has to, because it's very apparent just from anyone in the fans down at BCA watching these games. So whether or not he gets in, I think, having the day off today will help, but it's also a 12:30 matinee game on Saturday. That might not be a bad spot against a Minnesota team that is, the Finnish Swedish capital of North America, it seems. You know what I mean? I don't know.
They've
It would be
lost 2 in a
fitting
row,
for
that
that.
Minnesota team.
They
They have,
have. Yeah.
so they're gettable, I think, to keep this little run going, and, yeah, it'll depend on Zucker, like,
Yeah.
how banged up is he feeling, you know? Not just the shot block, but whatever happened before that. I mean, the fact that he got back on the ice is an encouraging sign that it wasn't something major, but he knew how bad the whole group wanted that win, so it was, he might have been gutting through more than, and he did that last time, remember? He gutted through those injuries, and then he was out
Yeah.
for a while, so something to watch.
Now, keep in mind, by the way, even though I mentioned positional versatility with Hellenius, I would expect them, if he did get a game, to probably start him on the wing, simplify his life, put him on a wing. He doesn't have to manage those responsibilities, especially since you have Kozak back in and healthy. You got to take advantage of Kozak being good to go, because Kozak's that guy. He's always struggled to stay healthy. You can rely on him for hopefully short stretches and good spurts, but like all those guys need load management. Greenway, Kozak, Dunn out. I think the only one really that you can rely on, Malenstein's like the guy that just seems to stay healthy, and he's guy out there. I think probably leading the team in hits. He's got to be leading the team in hits and blocked shots. Probably.
Yeah,
I haven't looked. I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but I mean,
he has
he's a
been
horse.
yeah, he's been a horse. He had a few last night, like, that really put a charge into the group. I mean, that's why I threw his name out there, is like, if you're ever thinking back on this team fondly, if they start to accomplish something, this group, whether it's this year, next year, or whatever, like, I feel like that's a guy that people are gonna look back and think, "Oh, yeah, Beck Malenstein." Uh, they'll remember the big hits, and Greenway last night was an emotional driver for this
He
group.
was impactful.
He was he was really impactful, and, like, you're seeing it a lot where it's like he gets a night off and he comes back and he's fresh and he's, ready to make an impact. Kozak, another one that, like you said, if you could count on him to stay healthy, it would be huge, because fastest guy on the team,
Mhm.
probably, and heavy hitter, and really, pretty solid defensive player, just plays a grown up game, and that's why it's nice to have that little rotation of guys down there, and mixing and matching with a few different guys. And I give Peyton Krebs a lot of credit for, he can go back down to that line and be solid for you on the fourth line, but to be, they talk about him like the utility knife, where you can throw him on any line, and I haven't always felt like he lives up to that idea, right? It's like, yeah, you can put him on any line, but is he gonna impact that line?
Yeah.
And I think last night, the play he made on Thompson's goal, it's like he's starting to find a way to play different versions of his game depending on who he's with and really be that utility knife. Still not, you know, a complete game changer of a player, but an important guy to have to help piece your lineup together when you're battling through the bumps and bruises of a season.
We talked about it when Kekalainen came in and was, making his statement again. I keep going back to how he defines talent and all that stuff. And we mentioned here is like, I wonder what he thinks of Peyton Krebs, a player like that with that effort, that compete level. Um, and that's also a factor. I think you're seeing it, Hellenius maybe keeping his game more in straight lines than a Rosane, maybe again as a factor. I think that those are players you're starting to kind of get an idea when we get closer to the deadline, maybe that type of player that a Kekalainen might go after. You never know. But kind of interesting. Another guy though, a Swiss Army knife, utility knife, however you want to call it, a guy that projects that way. Got to get a plug in for Pro Corporal Topov while we're here. He's been in on all of Seska's last 6 goals, had another goal yesterday. He's got 3 in a row. He's a 3-game point streak, but goals in 3 straight games. That guy is just, I think when fans look at his stats, he had 40 points last year. He'll probably have somewhere around 40 again this year. It's not like eye popping his numbers, but when you watch him play, that is a guy that I think can play up and down the lineup at some point if he decides to come over here. So I don't want to lose sight of Poltapov. Every time he does something, I send it to you. I'm just like, hey, look at this guy. And it's the way that he scores. Really smart player. Loves to get on the forecheck. Had a stick lift goal the other day, stripped a defenseman who just fell asleep for like a second, trying to backpedal and get a puck. Just goes in, stick lift, breaks down, scores. I mean, he's got good hands, really good, carrying speed with the puck, gets in on the forecheck. I just love watching this guy play. And I just want to mention it because it's easy to forget about him if you're a Sabres fan, but that's another guy, he'll be 24 when his contract runs out at the end of next season, not this season. And, it's up to him.
Yeah,
if he's going to want to come over,
that's,
but I think that's a player that Kekalainen would like.
Well, and it's a good time, if he comes over at 24,
Perfect.
the expectation changes, right? It's like, oh, you can bring this guy over and plug him in and,
Yeah.
he can play for you. If they had brought him over prior to this contract, it might have been, okay, put him in the AHL, keep developing him. But, you can bring over a ready-made player if he comes over at 24. And, if he signs another contract over there, that's when you probably start to wonder, like, will he come over? But
If
I
he
think,
does, it'd be a 1 year. I think it'd just be like a 1 year.
Yeah, that's an option too. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know he's a guy that I've, watched a little more closely and, following the situation just because at first it was because he was what the Sabres were missing. Now they have a little bit more of that, but to your point, it's what Jarmo Kekalainen's not going to be able to get enough of, right? Is that competitiveness and that nastiness. And
there's no way that Jarmo doesn't like this player.
And you're seeing, I think the type of player Josh Doan is should be an eye opener to the type of player that, it changes your idea of what a good hockey player looks like. They don't all look like JJ Peterka. Like they look like Josh Doan, on the good teams. And I don't know if it changes your idea, but it's a reminder, I guess, of what a good hockey player looks like. It's not about skating fast and having a great shot like Peterka. It's about all the other things that lead to goals and consistency night in and night out. So that Doan price just keeps going up. But I texted you the other day, Poltapov might look pretty good on an opposite wing from Doan one day.
Yeah, he can put him anywhere. I mean, he plays power play. Right now, last year he was the guy that was killing penalties. You know what I mean? Just well-rounded, reliable. And the one thing that I want to point out about Poltapov, by the way, is that Seska had a new coach last year that really seemed to believe in him and trust him. And that's when his ice time went up, his utility, his value to the team went up, all situations utility, then for whatever reason they get rid of Vorobiev and they get a new coach this year, very demanding coach. And that's really good for his development. The new coach there, really, really, really demanding. Structure, hard-nosed coach, right? It's like some Lindy vibes, like old Lindy vibes. I think Lindy's a little softer now. But again, just want to point that out. It's a situation that I'm watching very closely. But yeah, 1 year left on his contract, moving in the right direction. Don't forget about him.
You
So
mentioned old Lindy vibes, and it was, I don't know if you caught last night toward the end of Lindy's press conference. He was talking about, I had asked him earlier in the week. He was saying he was hoping the guys were excited to see him. Like he was excited to see all the guys. He's like, hopefully they're happy to see me. And I asked him like, were they happy to see you? And he definitely got a little they were, right? And he's like, we had a lot of good laughs. And Paul Hamilton followed up with a question about Max Afinogenov, who had been through the media room earlier in the day, saying it wasn't until later on he realized that coaching, how valuable it was for his game and even for just him as a person later in life. And Lindy shared a story that Afinogenov, kind of pulled him into his office earlier and early in the day when those guys were in the building and had a really nice bottle of Russian vodka for him, as a gift. And it clearly meant a lot to Lindy Ruff. Like he was reflecting after the game. He's like, I did push guys too hard. He's like, you wonder. He's like, I wonder. And he's like, I know that I did. And Max was probably one of those guys. But cool moment there's something that's really cool about Lindy Ruff being the coach for a moment like last night. And there's a connective tissue there when you talk about the importance of maybe this team embodying some of that and embracing some of that. Hey, maybe we are like this 05, 06. It's pretty important that Lindy Ruff is able to be the connective tissue to that. And maybe that these guys, they hear the way these guys talk about Lindy Ruff and, have more of an appreciation for what they've got behind the bench. So it was, it made me think of it when you were talking about that coach,
mhm,
who coaches Pull
yeah.
Topov hard, because wanted to throw that in there. It was a pretty cool little anecdote from Lindy.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too with Lindy, right? When in December 15th, a month and a day ago, when the changes were made, a lot of rumors swirling around the league and in this town about maybe Lindy getting removed from the bench. And it was nice to see him be able to be on the bench still with the team going as well as they are with that group in town last night. It was good. I'm not a super nostalgic person for whatever reason about that team or just anything, honestly. Well, that's not true. But like when it comes to sports, the Sabres, I don't think I'm as nostalgic. It was good seeing a lot of those guys last night. It was great seeing Teppo Newman and put the skates on. Nice touch having him skate out there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Nice touch.
I thought
Nice
that was
touch.
cool. I wasn't expecting it. And you think about like the guys sitting down with each other and lacing them up. I mean, that's like,
Yeah. It's a good
that's
picture. Yeah, it was great.
that's what you miss when you're
Mhm.
not with your teammates anymore, right? When you think about guys you played with at any level, you think about sitting in the locker room, lacing up your skates and shooting the breeze. And so to see the picture of all those guys, Jay McKee was joking with us that, he's on his skates every day. He had his own skates. Some guys didn't bring their skates or they hadn't been on skates in a while. So there were some nerves in the group about taking that first step. You saw a few uneasy steps when they stepped out there, but um, that was a nice little
Mm.
touch. They hit all the right notes, I felt like, last night with, uh, that ceremony. And, I thought and then Pominville and Vanek going into the Hall of Fame and getting surprised with that announcement,
Yeah.
was pretty cool. So there'll be another night to kinda celebrate, that team or that era again next year when both those guys go in.
Well, we'll see if the Sabres can keep drafting off that energy. Um, we'll see, right? 12:30 start. against the Minnesota Wild on home ice. They're going to end the homestand on Saturday, and then they begin a 5-game block on the road. Carolina on Monday, Nashville on Tuesday, another back-to-back. Montreal Thursday. They visit the Islanders on Saturday, and then they will end that 5-game block of road games the following Tuesday in Toronto. So the other thing before we end it, Sabres picked up their 20th regulation victory last night. I went back and looked. They only had 29 regulation victories all last year. So 26-16-4 is this team, 56 points, 609 points percentage, fourth in the Atlantic Division, 8-3-2 record in the division now. And yeah, sitting about 10th place in the entire NHL, this Buffalo Sabres. So yeah. It was easier to talk about the bad team.
Yeah, you get into the group. I said the same thing to my editor, when we're talking, and I'm like, I got to figure out what it's like to cover a real team. I'm gonna have to pick my colleagues' brains a little bit. Like, so what is it about these playoffs? You got to fill me in on this, like how this all works. But yeah, you get used to
Let's
the
not get ahead of
groove.
ourselves.
Well, yeah, it's still like it's still like a 50-50 thing. Honestly,
Yep.
it's like the way the East is, but they're improving their odds like little by little. And that regulation win stat is a good one to point out because it is as many regulation wins as Detroit, 3 more than Montreal. So, that's your tiebreaker. They have more regulation wins or as many. The only teams that have more in the Eastern Conference are the Capitals, the Panthers, and the Lightning. So that's pretty good right there. And they're tied with the Red Wings and Bruins with 20. But not just that, they have the 5th best goal differential in the conference.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they're like 11th maybe in the entire NHL. So some of the little indicators are looking pretty good for this team. So we've been talking about that Olympic break, right? Like get to the Olympic break in good standing and then it's on. And I think the Olympic break will be fine for them even though they're hot, like, getting a couple weeks off. Like it seems like good health is going to be important to this team. I don't feel like this team is drafting off of, good vibes, right? And just Tage Thompson said it last night. It doesn't feel fabricated. It feels real. And I would agree with that in that the important thing is getting healthy and having a fully healthy lineup because when they're healthy, they're a legit good team. And they'll get a chance to do that at the break. It's just about getting there getting there in good standing, and we'll see if they can keep it going because the schedule does not relent. It just keeps plowing forward against some good teams, Minnesota and Carolina, the next 2 games. Nashville's the second half of a back-to-back, and then Montreal and the Islanders, 2 more games, crucial points against other wild card contenders.
Curious to see how it shakes out and see how the Sabres can. I only want to look forward to the Saturday game before we start talking about the road. But
Chris is a one game at a time kind of guy, just one podcast at a time, right?
One podcast at a time, one day of work at a time. Shit, one meal at a time. All right, man. Let's do some plugs and let's end our Friday edition of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show.
Yeah, people can head to theathletic.com/Sabres and catch up on everything I've been writing. I've got something coming at some point this weekend. Good chat I had in the room with one Michael Kesselring that I will be sharing here pretty soon. He should be back relatively soon, and he's pretty eager to show people what he can do. So can catch up on all the reunion night stuff. I'll probably empty the notebook because there was almost more stuff last night than could fit. into one column, but busy week. So go check that out and like this video. Head to the YouTube channel and leave comments, all that good stuff to help boost the show. And we'll be back at it next week.
You heard him, everyone. Get over to theathletic.com, read his stuff, and while you're there, go over to Dom's playoffs. You don't have to do it. We'll send the fans over there to kind of refresh that in the morning and see what he has in terms of projected odds of the Sabres making the playoffs this year. For Matthew Fairbairn, for the production crew who was in my ear last night wondering if Colton Ellis can improve covering the puck up on his rebounds, I'm Chris Baker. Thanks for making this show part of your routine. Big sports weekend coming up here for Buffalo sports fans. Hope everyone enjoys it. And we'll be here early next week to recap all the action. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.